Thank you to my friends at Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Good morning, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to another video. I hope you've been keeping very well and have had a beautiful January. I'm really excited because in today's video I'm sharing with you 3 hearty vegan dinners, and these are dinners that I have been enjoying pretty regularly lately and just loving. They fill my soul, they fill my belly, they fill my heart. Yeah, they're 3 recipes I really love. So in today's video I'm going to share with you how I make all of these. I want to say also a big thank you to my friends at Squarespace who very kindly sponsored today's video. You would know by now I host my website with Squarespace, have been doing so for well over a year now and really enjoy doing so. To accompany today's video, I have also created a blog post so that you can easily go back to it, and the blogging features on Squarespace are something that I really enjoy and get a lot of benefit from, especially with doing the whole food blogging thing. So they make it very easy to host a blog on Squarespace because you can easily save blog posts, publish them or schedule them when you would like to. And as well as that, if you're someone like me who has a few different social media platforms, you can very easily link those all to your website as well. With all that being said, if you do want to try Squarespace, you can head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and then when you're ready to launch, you can go to squarespace.com/AmandaDux. That will get you 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, let's get into the first recipe for today, and this one I feel is very highly anticipated. This is my recipe for some super easy and delicious tray bake nachos. So the first thing we are making for my tray bake nachos is a creamy cheesy sauce, and I personally like making this on a base of pumpkin and cashews. You could also sub out the pumpkin for potato or carrot if you would prefer to. So I start by cutting up the pumpkin into cubes. I just want small pieces that are going to not only boil quickly but then also blend easily. So I put these into a pot of boiling water and I leave these in for about 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, I then also add in some cashews. You put the cashews in boiling water so that they soften and then once again are a lot easier to blend. So I boiled this up for another few minutes altogether before I strained it, and then I also rinsed it with cold water just to give my Vitamix a little bit of rest so that it's not blending boiling hot ingredients. I then put these into my Vitamix and I also added in nutritional yeast. Then I also added in some garlic powder as well as smoked paprika. I then also added in some Dijon mustard as well as some lemon juice, and I also added in some liquid vegetable stock, and later while I was blending I also added in some extra salt. So I blended this all together until it was really nice and smooth, and that was my creamy cheesy sauce which is going to go on top. But before we get to that, we need to char some corn. So I love putting corn on my nachos and tacos and all of the things, and to char corn I just put some oil as well as frozen corn into a frying pan and I fry it all up until it gets nice and golden. After I made the corn, it was time to make the mince, and so I put some TVP as well as some boiling water into a bowl and set it to the side for a few minutes so that it all got nice and thick, and then into a frying pan I put some oil as well as black beans, followed by my TVP mince which I had just prepared. Then after this I just lightly mixed it together before we get into adding our spices and flavoring. So I added in some liquid vegetable stock as well as some garlic powder and smoked paprika. If you have one of those like taco seasoning or nacho seasoning packets, you could also use that here instead. I also added in some salt and then also some nutritional yeast and mixed this all together, and I just left this to cook for like 5 minutes so that it got a nice meaty texture. And yeah, you can sort of see here what you kind of want the texture to look like. So now it is time for us to bake the nachos. So I used 2 bags of corn chips, piled these onto a large baking tray, and then I used some salsa from the jar. You could make a fresh salsa if you would like to. I personally just prefer getting a jar of salsa rather than chopping up a bunch of tomatoes avocados. So yes, I put this whole jar on here for all of the flavor. Then I sprinkled on my charred corn, which I'd obviously prepared earlier, and then it was time for me to add on the vegan black bean mince that I had made. So just putting this on top of my nachos, and then from there we are going to put this into the oven and bake it for about like 10 to 15 minutes. You can sort of tell when you look at the corn chips that they're nice and golden. And of course with nachos we need to make guacamole, so I used 1.5 avocados for this guac, and I just like to keep my guac very simple. I put the avocado into a bowl. I then also added in some lime. You can use lemon if you would like to. I'm just a lime kind of gal, so I squeezed the lime in there. I then also added in some salt as well as some pepper, and I just mashed this up until it was relatively smooth and delicious, of course. And then when it came time to plate the nachos, I've got my cheesy sauce and I am pouring it on top. Oh, I love this cheesy sauce so much. Then I am piling on the guacamole, and then I'm also adding on some fresh lime wedges as well as coriander to taste. You could also add some vegan sour cream here if you had any on hand, or some coconut yogurt, but this is pretty much my vegan tray bake nachos. They are so delicious and I literally could eat these all up right now. I honestly make those nachos at least once a week. I love them so much, and yeah, everyone is always very impressed. So make sure to let me know if you enjoy them, if you try them, and yeah. Okay, from here we're gonna move into a baked gnocchi dish. This has pumpkin and sage in it for extra flavor. I really love this one, and I hope you do as well. So once again, we are starting with pumpkin for this recipe. This time I would definitely recommend using the pumpkin rather than subbing out for another vegetable. So I am cutting this into small cubes and then put them all into a bowl. Then I drizzled with some olive oil, added on some salt as well as some pepper. And then from here I also added in some sage. I just cut some fresh sage leaves so they were in nice small pieces, and then I tossed all of this together so that everything was very evenly coated. Once that was all done, I poured it into a baking dish. You want to make sure there's a decent amount of height on it because we're going to add everything into this dish as well. And then I spread all of the pumpkin out before putting this in the oven to roast for about 30 minutes. Then it was time to make our creamy sauce, so I started with some cauliflower, which is the base of this creamy sauce. Here is where you could sub out for potato if you would like to. I then added the cauliflower into some boiling water to get it nice and soft. I left it in there for about 15 minutes so that it was really soft. Okay, so from there we are then going to also add some cashews into the boiling water, similar to what we did in the nacho recipe, just so that they get nice and soft and they are easy to blend for our sauce. Then I am pouring these into, after draining of course, pouring them into my Vitamix, adding some nutritional yeast as well as garlic powder. Then I also added in some Dijon mustard of course, as well as some lemon juice here. After the lemon juice, I then also added in some liquid vegetable stock, which I seem to be loving a lot lately, and blended this all up to make this sauce. Whilst I was doing all of this, I then also cooked some gnocchi. So I just did it as per the packet instructions, and this whole gnocchi dish makes about like 4 serves. So you want to get a gnocchi that has about 4 serves in it. Once the gnocchi was cooked and I removed it all from the water, I then poured it in with my pumpkin, which had been baking. I tossed this all together to get that nice sage flavor and the oil sort of all over the gnocchi, and then it was time for me to pour the sauce over. So you can sort of see the texture of the sauce you want here. It is really just not too thick and not too thin. It has a nice pour on it, and you want to pour this all over and then toss together that gnocchi and pumpkin so it's nice and evenly dispersed. I then also topped it with some extra fresh sage before putting it in the oven to bake. And this is what your baked gnocchi is going to look like afterwards. Super creamy with a nice like golden coat on top. This is absolutely delicious. There is just something about a creamy pasta which I will never get over. It is so good, and I'm really having a gnocchi moment at the moment. I hope you love that pasta dish if you decide to try it out at home. And next we are moving into my recipe for shepherd's pie. My friend recently tried this and said it was the best vegan shepherd's pie she'd ever had, so do with that what you will, but I do think that this is a really delicious recipe, and once again is something I'm making at least once a week at the moment because it's super hearty, nutritious and filling, and as well as that, it's just really, really easy to make. So to make the shepherd's pie, I'm first of all starting by peeling about 5 to 6 potatoes. This recipe serves about 4 once again, honestly maybe even more, so just keep that in mind when you're preparing this as well if you want to make more or less. So yes, I peeled the potatoes and then cut them into small cubes because once again we are going to be boiling these, so we want them to boil as quickly as we possibly can. I'm an impatient gal over here, so this is my method that works well for me. So I put all of these potatoes into boil. I left them for about 15 minutes, and whilst I was doing that I started preparing the mince part of the shepherd's pie. So I started by cutting half a brown onion into small pieces. I basically want it to be as fine as possible, and then I also got 3 garlic cloves which I crushed and also cut into small pieces. Again, you want to get them as small as you possibly can. After this, I then also got some celery. I love putting celery in my shepherd's pie. I think it adds such a great flavor and crispness to it. So I got 3 small stalks of celery, and I again cut it into very small pieces. I then transferred all of this into a large frying pan that I had already put some oil in, and then I fried these up until they got mildly like translucent. Then I added in some fresh oregano and fresh rosemary, continued frying that up before I added in some carrot which I had finely chopped, as well as some frozen peas, frozen corn, and I just kept mixing this together until those peas and corn got nice and soft before I added in a couple of cans of brown lentils which I had drained and rinsed. And then from here I also added in some liquid vegetable stock, loving it so much clearly, and some tinned tomatoes. You don't need to add a heap of liquid, but you want enough so that you get this, you know, nice moisture to the dish. And then I also added in some nutritional yeast, of course, and I kept mixing this together and I left it to cook and to boil for about like 5 to 10 minutes. Whilst that was boiling away, I then got my potatoes, drained and rinsed them, put them into a bowl, and then also added in some soy milk as well as some vegan butter. You could sub some oil here if you would like to. I then also added in some nutritional yeast and some salt for extra flavor before I mashed all of this together to get it into a nice creamy mashed potato. So then once both of these things were done, I poured them into a baking dish. I started with the lentil mixture down the bottom, and then I topped it with my nice creamy smooth mashed potato. Oh, it looks so divine. So yes, I put this on top, and then on top of this I then also put some fresh oregano. You definitely don't have to do this. I really like the aesthetic of it, if I'm completely honest, but it also tastes delicious, obviously. Then I drizzled with some extra olive oil and put this in the oven to bake for about 20 minutes. Once it's all done, you want it to have this nice golden top as well as this nice browning around the edges from the lentils. This is so delicious. I love making this for myself but also for my friends and family because it is always a hit, and yeah, I hope you love it as much as I do. So yes, that shepherd's pie recipe has a very special place in my heart because it is so good, and yeah, I just love it very, very much so. And it also brings us to the end of today's video. So as I mentioned, there is a blog post to accompany this video. I've linked it down below so you can go back to it if you want to make any of these recipes at home. As always, I really wanted to say a big thank you for being here, for supporting me and my channel. I appreciate it a lot. I hope you have a very beautiful day, and I will see you very soon for another video. Bye! Have a good day!